It's impossible. Tell the sun to leave the sky. It's just...
Greetings from Castle Goring, from Nikki, Aurora, and from me. Well, I have news from on high, and I am going to intermingle it with a question or two so that it's fitting in with the questions, because I rather like when I can answer a question and work in news from on high. Bongo drums are beating. And in the interest of discretion and also for legal considerations, not my own, incidentally, I will leap right in with Mrs. Marsbar. Oh, I do hope, Mrs. Marsbar, that you have nothing to do with Marianne Faithfull. Naughty moi. Hi, Lady C. I have a question. The Sioux sexes were all very much on the front foot, buying up any and all possible domain names and variations thereof ahead of his children's birth, but she cannot manage to do the same with her new business venture, Yankee Swamp Farm. I don't think it's Yankee Swamp Farm. Oh, she says, sorry, American Riviera Orchard. Hence, all of this nonsense about the redirected page to Catherine's charity. Something doesn't add up here. And if she was so emphasized, proactive for the children's domains, but not her business money-making venture, my question is why? Good question. Well spotted. Surely she is more wily than that. Well, do you think a snake is wily? Your thoughts. Love your show. Thank you very much, Mrs. Marsbar. I'm glad you like my show. Well, you're on to something, and the something you're on to is that this is yet another publicity stunt. Meghan is firmly of the school which believes that as long as you are in the news, you are important and relevant. She's never heard the maxim, too much publicity is not a good thing. Well, the whole thing has been carefully calibrated to boost her profile and Harry's profile, and in the hope that they will become more attractive commercially, and that she, in this latest thing, a royal oik, is going to be distracting away from negative publicity by getting other people who also are publicity hungry to jump on the bandwagon, and each foray from each person increases the profile of the other person. It's really quite clever, actually. So she's hitting all the bases as well, because she has that D-list actress Abigail Spencer. Oh, sorry, the great star Abigail Spencer, the one who Elizabeth Taylor would have absolutely mowed down because she's so much a bigger star than Elizabeth Taylor ever was, if Elizabeth Taylor were still around to mow her down. She has her promoting it and herself. And notice Meghan's, and take out your violins now, time to go, pew, heartstrings to the fore. She has a photograph taken by whom is beside the point, of Abigail Spencer lolling on the grass with Meghan's rescue dog, Mamma Mia. Oh, we mustn't forget, Meghan's a humanitarian. She loves dog. Well, I was very naughty there. Jamaicans will pick that up. I don't think anybody else will. She has got the point across. Then she has Melissa McCarthy wading in to, of course, get more publicity for herself as well. With, at an opening last week, Melissa McCarthy, who, if you recall, was in Meghan's 40 by 40 skit. I know some people would say that there was one little angle of that K that really should not have been there, so that the letter could have been moved higher up the alphabet and look pretty much the same, just without the bottom of the H touching the left side when it could have remained parallel. Well, not only was Melissa McCarthy and Meghan quite rude about the royal way of doing things, and I'm not going to refresh anybody's memory by being too particular, but it was quite offensive, including, it needs to be remembered, to the late Queen. But we're not going there. Meghan's dear friend Melissa McCarthy has waded in and told Page 6 that criticism of Meghan is because people are threatened by her, that she is wonderful and awesome, and that it bums me out for every woman and every person that for no reason people just like to attack. A smart, interesting woman that has her own life, for some reason, is incredibly threatening to some people. I always think how inspiring. I've never once been threatened by someone who is amazing. I just think how inspiring. It's really on the people throwing the hate. Well, I'm going to make the point right here that Melissa McCarthy is crass, crude, and vulgar. Her performance with Meghan showed it. And this comment shows that rather like Meghan, she has the depth of a teaspoon and the intellect of a brain active newt. People are threatened by Meghan. That's because she's threatening them. She has threatened the stability of the monarchy. She has threatened the reputation of the monarchy. She has threatened the heritage and the legacy of the late Queen with the Commonwealth. Yes, she has threatened an awful lot of people, but not because people are envious of her, which is what Melissa McCarthy would like people to believe. It is not because she is wonderful and awesome, because anybody who marries into a family and treacherously attacks that family, especially when it is a reigning family that has worldwide connections, and where those connections will be threatened worldwide. How is she wonderful? Awesome? Well, I gather that awesome is a much overused word nowadays. So I'm not even going to go there with more awesome. An interesting woman, smart, interesting woman that has her own life. Not so smart that she hasn't worked her way from popularity to unpopularity. Or is that too smart to have worked her way from popularity to unpopularity? You know, idiots like Melissa McCarthy don't seem to understand that defending the valid, lawful institutions of the oldest democracy in the world is not hateful. It is responsible. Of course, she was a part, if I recall correctly, of Meghan's 40 by 40 mentorship scheme. Well, what's become of that? What's going to become of this? You know, when people like Melissa McCarthy open up their mouths and chat what dogs usually do once or twice a day, and if they were human, they would avail themselves of the 16 bathrooms that Meghan and Harry have in their house, evidently well used because they're so full of it. She would understand that she is making a total fool of herself. And for the record, Melissa McCarthy, nobody is threatened by Meghan because she's wonderful. People are threatened by Meghan because she's awful, she's dreadful, she's irresponsible, and she is also ultimately destructive. Of course, you wouldn't be able to figure that out because you don't have either the knowledge or the sophistication. And by the way you are conducting yourself, I would say you don't have the brain power either. Tasmanian Tiger says, Lady C, no matter how you try and pass it, Markle was never going to integrate and become a cooperative, loyal, working member of the royal family. Apart from having a hidden alternative agenda, her personality and character precluded her from succeeding in the role. Thankfully, the British public and the Commonwealth were protected from further antisocial behaviour by her fleeing. I now think that Megxit, that she managed to stay for only 2 years, was a blessing in many ways. Do you think if she'd stayed in the royal family rather than outside of it, that the damage would have been lesser or greater? No. I think had she stayed longer, no, the question is so hypothetical that it is not actually possible to answer it sensibly. The fact of the matter is, Meghan was able to stay only as long as she could hack it, because she was not altruistic enough. She wasn't disciplined enough. She wasn't appreciative enough. She wasn't humble enough. She wasn't flexible enough. She wasn't vocational enough. She wasn't self-sacrificing enough. She wasn't humane enough. She wasn't generous-spirited enough. Had she stayed longer and been the same person she is, there would have been a massive collision with the powers that be at the palace, because Meghan had been aiming for collisions, and they had been dexterously trying to mitigate the circumstances. There was the business of Meghan and Harry bullying the staff. That was one thing. There was Meghan's commercial activities. That was another thing. There was Meghan and Harry's determination to, from within, align the royal family with their agenda of destroying the free press in this country. All of these things were bubbling beneath the surface. There was also the whole business of the Meganian bumps and all the belly clutching. And we won't even go further than that at this point. But that had caused problems as well. Because you see, it took a long time for the powers that be to realize what was going on. They didn't have the eye on the ball. Well, I should rephrase that. They didn't have their eye on the bump. They just took it all for granted. So there was all of that going on. She was never going to be a character who would fit in, because there is no way that she can fit in. She is a dominating hustler whose game plan is that of a lone wolf operative pretending to be a farm animal. She may be able to dupe the Melissa McCarthys of this world, but she wasn't able to dupe people who were more sophisticated, more intelligent, and more educated. So I hope that answers the question. Christelle says, Dear Lady C, let me go back to it for a second and say, had she had greater self-discipline, had she been more measured and equally malignant, because we're speaking about a very malign individual, she would have been able to have gained a larger following and greater credibility, and she would have been able to do more damage, because people would have contrasted her accusations with her performance. There was very little performance of any note, and noteworthiness, I should say as well, as a comparable. So she started off with the benefit that all members of a royal family have, which is credibility, respectability, and being given the benefit of the doubt was a natural thing, which, as her revelations unfolded, she didn't realize she was revealing herself to the public. And that's what made her unpopular. Had she been revealing fact to the public, because remember, to this day, she has not yet backed up with any actual repetition the supposed racist comment that he claimed in Oprah and she claimed in Oprah had been made by one person, but then magically she and he managed to allow amid scabies to say it was two people, and a third name has been bandied about as well. So, but fortunately for us, she is so, quite frankly, in my opinion, revolting that she was able to unmask herself relatively quickly. Christelle says, "Dear Lady C, I got disgusted by all those MSM feigning shock and disgust over Thomas Markle Jr.'s parody that I told them off strongly in a comment on a Talk TV report. Not that my comments hold much value to them. On what hypocrites they are, as they do not express such puke-like disgust over Harry and Meghan milking millions by trashing their families, etc. This is not the first time Thomas has made this parody, so why now? It made me wonder if the book release, no, if the I've lost my place. It made me wonder if this is the MSM way of bringing the bump into the forefront since your book release, but they are too cowardly to take it head on. Or am I being naive in this assumption? Or is it remotely possible, Lady C? Thank you." Oh, it's very possible. You know, the British media are, by and large, totally gutless. They only will advocate for a worthwhile cause if they think it is in their financial or political interest to do so. The whole situation with regards to Meghan and Harry is so layered, so mixed, and so convoluted that only people of courage and conviction and integrity can actually work their way successfully through the minefield to an edifying and ultimately constructive conclusion. It takes character and integrity to be able to negotiate your way through such a minefield without doing damage where it should not be done. They don't have the ability, or it has to be said, the initiative or the inclination to do so. And they won't until one of them breaks ranks, and then all of them will be piling in saying, "We have discovered," like somebody from the middle of nowhere arriving in America on a tourist ship and saying, "Oh, my name is Americo Vespucci and I have just discovered America." there's an awful lot going on behind the scenes as well, that some of which it is injudicious to speak about. And there are certainly people in the mainstream media who have their finger on the pulse, and one or two of them would actually like to behave more responsibly than as a group they are behaving. But some of them are terrified. Some of them are terrified with good cause, and others are terrified because they're cowards. There are other things going on as well, where the mainstream media, not only in this country, but in the United States of America, have divergent interests. In the United States of America, with the mainstream media, it's all about money and supporting whatever agenda their owners feel is desirable. It's basically economically driven. In the United Kingdom, it's not necessarily economically driven. However, many of the mainstream media publications in this country are not pro-monarchist. Reach PLC is not pro-monarchist, although it will run stories about the monarchy because it's in the business of selling papers, and those sell the papers. The Murdoch press, by and large, has very mixed feelings about the royal family because Rupert Murdoch is well known to be pro-Republican and anti-monarchist. They are the main centrist right public newspaper group in the country. The only newspaper group in the country that is monarchist and not going to be kowtowing is the Telegraph, and it at the moment is in a state of flux because the Barclay brothers do not yet re-own it. I hope they do end up re-owning it, but they don't yet re-own it. And you have Ofcom overseeing everything, with many of the members of Ofcom are very leftist and very woke, and many of them are anti-monarchist and pro-Republican, or, as far as they're concerned, indifferent to this, the political structure in this country in terms of it being a monarchy. So you have all of that going on. So within those parameters, I'll explain what's happening here and what's happening in the United States at the moment. The British media are giving a wide berth to much that is disputatious where Harry and Meghan are concerned. First of all, they're nervous of the outcomes of any of the litigation that Harry has mounted with David Sherborne. They're nervous, and until that danger has passed, even those who would wish to do something dare not do something in case the present actions conclude before a future action which would involve putting a magnifying glass to Harry and Meghan's behaviour. Let's put it that way. So they have sound commercial reasons, and to an extent some of them are valid, because most of these companies, in fact all of them, are publicly listed companies, and they have obligations to their shareholders as well. So that's what's going on in the United Kingdom. In the United States, many of the media are owned by magnates, press magnates, for want of a better word, media magnates, who Harry and Meghan have wangled their way into via various connections, into lending, if not actual support, keeping them at arm's length while being nervous of breaking any really big stories that would expose Harry and Meghan in too vivid a light. Let's put it that way. For instance, I'll use an example. The Netflix series was a travesty, or as Samantha has said, it was a sham. It was just a sham, she said. And she based it on certain contributions made by her natural daughter. And I'm going to go into those briefly, because Netflix presented both Ashleigh Hale and Christopher Boozy in lights that, with closer examination, one has to question the veracity of the claims made on their behalf in the program. It is now quite apparent to anybody with a brain that Christopher Boozy and Bot Sentinel are a very sick joke, in my opinion. And certainly nobody with any intelligence would regard Bot Sentinel as a creditable organization. And it certainly was not the company of expertise that it was presented as being. And the comments he made on the Netflix series were promptly shot down by people who were rather more knowledgeable than he was about some of the claims he made. And Ashleigh Hale, very interesting, because the claims she made on the Netflix program and the claims that were made about her, when placed under a microscope, somehow aren't quite as concrete as they appeared to be at the time. For instance, she was promoted as an immigration lawyer, if I remember correctly. But she is listed as an administrative assistant at Fragaman in the San Francisco Bay Area. Researches indicate that she is not listed as a lawyer anywhere in California. Now, unless she is listed under a name nobody knows about, which I suppose is a remote possibility, but a possibility nevertheless, that begins to have fact and fiction intermingling. Because remember, Meghan played a paralegal who wasn't a lawyer, and Meghan played on Suits not only a non-lawyer who was supposed to have such legal expertise that Meghan's been. I don't know why she actually hasn't been asked to join the Supreme Court yet, but I suppose give it time. Maybe if Donald Trump is elected, he and she will kiss and make up, and he'll make her one of the judges on the Supreme Court. That would be quite an interesting outcome, because I'm sure she could certainly change her convictions if maybe $1 billion were attached to the appointment, just because she's so brilliant, of course, for no other reason. And of course, in Suits, her boyfriend Mike, or Michael, whatever his name was somebody claiming to be a lawyer who wasn't a lawyer. Well, evidently, Meghan's niece, the niece that she magically has managed to pull out of a hat as if she's a magician, without having a sister. She has a niece, the sister who doesn't exist's child. Well, they got together via Samantha in 2007. And I'm going to get to the inaccuracies in the Netflix show in a second, but I'm just making the point that has been made to me by Samantha, that she gladly got Meghan and Ashleigh in touch with each other. And Meghan somehow managed to become great friends with Ashleigh. And somehow Samantha got frozen out of that magical triangle. It became a duo. Well, there are one or two things that were said in the Netflix show that it turns out are completely untrue, because Ashleigh claimed that she and her brother, I don't remember exactly how she put it, but the message was that they decided and chose to live with their grandparents, their paternal grandparents. However, Ashleigh was 2 years old and her brother was in diapers when this happened. So how credible is it that a baby in diapers and a 2-year-old are able to choose? Samantha has told me that she and her ex-husband, the 2 children's father, decided to hand over the day-to-day care of their children to his parents, because she, Samantha, was working and he, I think, was working as well. And she did not want the children being brought up in daycare centres by hired help. She felt it would be, and so did he, it would be better for the children if his parents brought them up. Now remember, both of them were very, very young at the time. The Melissa McCarthys of this world are always begging for us to cut slack for a middle-aged woman who behaves like an ignorant teenager. But we're speaking of 2 youngsters who were just out of teenage. They weren't 30-something batting 40-something and into their 40s when all of this took place. And also, Samantha was already suffering from multiple sclerosis. So all of these need to be taken into account. But Ashleigh's claim was that effectively they chose to live with their grandparents. And that's not so. What also appears to be not so is that Ashleigh was supposedly an immigration lawyer, because how can she be an immigration lawyer unless, of course, the practice certificate, as it would be called in England, and I think in America it's called a license, can't be located? Because before she was at Fragamans, she was supposedly at I can't remember where she was. Oh yes, she was supposed to be an associate attorney at summer immigration law, and before that she was supposed to be a contract lawyer at Capital One Bank. Well, why is there no record of her being a lawyer? So is she a lawyer or isn't she a lawyer? Because we now know that Christopher Boozy is not an expert at Bot Sentinel. He's not an expert, I should rephrase that. He's not the expert he set himself up as being. Oh, he's an expert, all right. He certainly is an expert on running an escort agency. And he certainly is an expert on how bots function. Just not bots that he was trying to lay at the doorstep of people in terms of damaging Meghan and Harry. In fact, it would appear that that guppy creature was actually promoting Harry and Meghan, and whether he was doing it on their behalf or he gave instructions to them on how it's done, there was certainly, and there's ample evidence of the fact that Harry and Meghan had bots promoting them and making them out to be more popular and more influential than they were. And of course, the whole thing has been unraveling. And now I get to what Ashleigh claimed on the Netflix series, that she was not allowed to attend the wedding, although Meghan and Harry wanted her to attend, because the palace had told her that she couldn't have Ashleigh since she wasn't having her mother, of course, whom she shouldn't have. That's the message that comes across loud and clear in the Netflix show. It's not true. It's absolutely not true. I was told by someone at the palace, and I'm not going to go further than that at this point, that there was grave concern at the palace as to why Meghan was not having any member of her family there but her mother. And they thought her father. They thought her father, although there were grave concerns about the way she was freezing out her father from all the offers the palace was making to her about his welfare. Do I believe Ashleigh? I believe Ashleigh believed what she was saying. I believe that Ashleigh wasn't lying when she said that's what Meghan told her. But I believe my palace sources. I don't believe that Meghan for a second was strong-armed by the palace into refusing to have her niece there. Her niece. But she managed to develop a relationship with her niece, and she managed to freeze her sister out, who is the one who not only gave birth to her niece, but also connected her with her niece. Then they became sufficiently friendly for Meghan to be popping in, popping out of her life and involving her in matters, including giving Meghan credibility on the Netflix series. Well, I have my theory as to what happened, and I could be wrong, but I'm pretty sure I'm right. And I've never even told Samantha that this is my theory, but I'm going to say it nevertheless, because I think it's timely that this be said. In my opinion, Meghan was insanely jealous of Samantha. Everything I have heard from the family leads me to believe that Meghan was captivated by her older, more beautiful, glamorous white sister when she was a little girl. Intermingled with the admiration was envy and jealousy. Because remember, Thomas Markle has said, not only publicly, but he said it to me privately, that Meghan tried to get him to dump Samantha and Thomas Jr. and told him if he didn't dump them, she would refuse to have him at the wedding. What does that tell you? I mean, okay, a part of it was pragmatic. She didn't want them there at the wedding, or any of the other family, including the Johnsons, the black members of her family on her mother's side. She didn't want any of them there because she didn't want them opening up their mouths and blowing her false narrative of having struggled and womanfully conquered. I'm Boadicea. I have ridden into the troops on my chariot, and I am a heroine, and I am a victor. All total fantasy. So there was a combination of reasons, but I think a part of it was that she delighted in damaging the relationship, the burgeoning relationship between Samantha and Ashleigh. And the proof of the pudding is in the eating, because when Samantha and Ashleigh reconnected, because they had had very little to do with each other for years, and when they reconnected and were reforging a relationship, Samantha was generous enough to introduce her to her aunt Meghan. And the next thing you know is Ashleigh and Meghan are tighter than two ticks, and Samantha is excluded. And I think Ashleigh, who it would be a miracle if she didn't have mixed feelings about a mother who, for whatever reason, had allowed her to be brought up by another party. There has to be some element of abandonment issues connected to that whole scenario, which would be perfectly standard in a situation such as that. And I think Meghan, rather than palliating, needled. That's my take on it. And I think it's very unfortunate that Ashleigh would have believed that Meghan, who, it has to be said, can be very plausible and can be very charming and can be very sweet and can be ostensibly vulnerable when, of course, she's as vulnerable as an asp about to sting. But people are duped, and it's obvious to me, I could be wrong, but I don't think I am. I'm going off the evidence of my eyes and the evidence of what people have told me and the evidence of Meghan's prior conduct as well as present conduct. I think she set out to sabotage the relationship. Look at the job Meghan has done where the royal family is concerned. Look at how she set out to sabotage the royal family and their reputation internationally. This is a born saboteur. And people who don't see it, I am afraid, are begging to enable her and to collude with her destructiveness. So I agree with Samantha because she says that Meghan swooped in and that Meghan derailed the burgeoning relationship between Ashleigh and her birth mother. How do you think Samantha must feel? She reestablishes links with her daughter. Things are trundling along reasonably well, to such an extent that she incorporates Ashleigh into the larger family fold with Meghan. And remember, according to Meghan's timeline, she and Samantha were not in touch at all. So Ashleigh magically met Meghan. The betrayal. This woman has perfected the art of betrayal, in my opinion. And if I'm wrong, I'd love her to point out to me where I'm wrong. I will be the first one to eat humble pie and throw up my hands and apologize if I am wrong. But I sadly don't think I'm wrong, and I'll tell you what convinces me above all else that I'm right. Because Ashleigh was trotted out to paint a totally false picture, not only of the relationship and how it started, but between Meghan and herself. Because Meghan is the one who told Ashleigh, it's there for all to see, that but for the mean and nasty palace, as a result of the even meaner and nasty mother, namely Samantha, Meghan would have loved her to be at the wedding. Yeah. Absolutely. Absolutely. and pigs fly. Pigs fly. And on that note, I'll say thank you very much for listening. I would encourage you to please send in questions and comments so I will know what you would like us to speak about. And take good care. Godspeed. And if you have truly enjoyed this, may I invite you to like, share, subscribe, press the notification bell, and enjoy. Godspeed. Bye-bye.